Very small loss today. Okay, my next guest is nothing short of a powerful woman, and more relevantly, she's giving power to other women who run companies and need to find funding to make it all happen. She's been on the board of huge USA companies like Oracle and Nabisco, and she was the first woman to head up a US television network. Nowadays, she heads up Springboard Enterprises, and she joins me in the studio. Kate, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, one thing I haven't said is exactly what your name is. So it's Kay Koplovitz, is
Koplovitz.
that? Koplovitz.
Just roll right into it.
I know, I should have actually practiced it before we started, but it's great to meet you. You've got a really impressive CV. What was it like being on boards of Oracle and Nabisco?
Well, you know, very different, totally different kinds of boards. In Oracle, you've got Larry Ellison.
I was going to ask you, what was Larry like?
And the company's a founder. It's a founder board. Founder boards are quite different.
Yeah.
They have a lot of control. It's a very small board, a very open board. It was very, you know, cross currents, everything. It was very wide open. And Nabisco was a pretty much up and down board. It was at the time part of RJR, and had spun off, but not completely.
Yep.
And then RJR went through a lot of lawsuits with regard to tobacco.
Yep.
And so it was a very difficult time, and it was a very tense time for the company because it had been taken over by a private equity firm, had to sell off a lot of their assets in order to get the returns. Very, very difficult time to get through, so they were very different.
Must have been a steep learning curve for you when that was going on.
It was very interesting. I really had been in business for several decades at that point in time, so I had my own experience to bring to the board. But I did learn from other board members, and I really learned through, when you go through a very difficult time, you learn more. You have to.
Yeah. And
you have fewer choices. So you have to do certain things to really survive. And so Nabisco went through a bit of a period of time like that.
Yeah.
And so I mean, they're very different. Every board, I've been on several, every board is different.
Was there a bit of hullabaloo when you became CEO of the USA Network, first
Well, I'm
woman?
the founder, so it was no hullabaloo. When people have asked me, how do you get to be the CEO? I say, first you start there, and everything else pales in comparison,
Yeah,
okay?
Right.
Since I'm founder of the company and started it as the first basic cable network by satellite in the United States and set the business model for cable networks around the globe by introducing two revenue streams, not just advertising, but getting a license fee from the cable operator. That was really the brilliance of what we did at USA.
How long ago was that, Kate?
1977.
Yeah, that was
in
pioneering
1977,
days, yeah.
And it was, you know, really a new business model, a new market. It's great to be in a new market, especially when it is going to take off.
Yeah.
So we were really the first in the marketplace, and it was an all-sports network. So I brought all the professional sports to cable, except the NFL that came about 10 years later.
That was a hard sell, selling sports to America.
Yeah, it was not hard to do that. It was, I think, you know, unusual. None of the leagues had thought about this. We only really had sports on the weekend and Monday Night Football and Wide World of Sports on ABC and so forth. So it was a whole expansion of sports every night, and preceded ESPN and other sports networks that came along after that, and I went into entertainment as well. So,
okay. Tell us about Springboard Enterprises.
Springboard Enterprises, something that I co-founded in the year 2000 with some of my colleagues, because when I was leaving USA Network, President Clinton asked me to be the chair of the National Women's Business Council, and it was really reporting to Congress on the progress of women-owned businesses. I wanted to do something bigger. I like results. Yeah. And I said, what can we do in a short period of time that will bring women into this marketplace in private equity? That's what I wanted to do. So we went out and looked for women in high-growth businesses in technology, life sciences, biotech, devices, diagnostics, e-commerce, and today, digital and social media. Yeah. High-growth businesses need venture capital or infusion capital for equity. Yeah. And the markets are blurring between angel and venture capital and so forth today, but that kind of capital that seeds the early stage growth of these companies was really necessary, and women weren't there.
I noticed the figures I've got here, I'm sure you could correct them, but in 2004, only 4% of women were actually accessing funding. Is that right? And now it's up to like 13%?
In terms of the venture markets, we went from 1.7% in 2000 of the $100 billion being invested to today we're up around 10%
Okay.
of all the investment going into.
A big jump.
We're making real progress. The really interesting thing is we've brought 537 companies to market, 8 of them previously here in Australia. Tomorrow we're doing our second class of 8 new entrepreneurs, all women, here in Australia.
Because you guys are here as well.
And we came here to help build out the ecosystem around venture companies, venture-built companies. We're supporting women, but for everybody in the entrepreneurial community, you've got to have the investors, you've got to have the entrepreneurs, the lawyers, the accountants, the mentors. You've got to have the door openers. You've got to have the corporate champions.
Yeah.
You've got to have that whole ecosystem. We have it in spades in the United States. We're just building it out for women.
Yeah.
Our companies have raised over $6.2 billion, 10 IPOs. Our 11th one is registered now. And a third of the companies have had positive liquidity events. So in asset allocation, I think venture is one of those assets that should be allocated, and especially for women.
It's good to see you're always in the market for funding. How do you actually help women, get access to funding?
It's human capital. It's very important to understand how important human capital is to the growth of any company or any entrepreneur. But for women who have not been in the club, heretofore, and they're just now starting, I think, to get some real traction in the club of venture, you have to have the people who will coach you, who will inform you, who will open a door for you, who will make the introductions for you. All these things have to happen.
Yeah.
It's all that human capital is so important, and that's what really brings you the financial capital as well. Financial capital will follow.
Okay. Now, you have had plenty of time to analyse the sisters in business.
Yeah.
And I noticed in some of the readings that being a brutal coach is an important part of this. So is it just business is like a man's world, or do women actually need to bring a different game to this man's world as it exists? And is that part of the thing you teach them?
What we teach them is really how to scale, how to love the sound of their own voice. One of the things that we have to teach women more about is really to be articulate about their own success.
Yeah.
And to present their
So not show-offs like male, are they?
It's really being more forceful about your accomplishments and your business, and learn how to pitch it. That's part of it. But the other part is how to identify the best coaches and mentors for those companies, attach them to one another so that they can grow from the experience of people that have been there. And our alums come back and coach companies coming behind them. They invest in them. So we're creating a whole ecosystem, and that is the beauty of it. And it's not a man's world, it's a woman's world, and we're going to show you that at it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Kate, do you find some women spend so much time building up their no-good husbands and helping their kids, they then neglect their own entity, so they don't see themselves as an entity, and they don't invest in themselves like they invest in their stupid husbands and wayward kids?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I would say that the average age of our entrepreneurs is like 30 to 55. And people coming with a lot of experience. So we have people in biotech that are 20 years lab scientists who really know what they're doing, and they're doing commercialization now, maybe for the first time for themselves. Yeah. So it's not, the picture on the poster is not a picture of a 20-year-old kid who lives in a dorm, stays up all night, and has no sex life, and just works. That's not the picture of who we are. We have to change the picture on the poster so people see a real entrepreneur has drive, conviction, persistence, and has something that she wants to prove for herself that she can really take a company to scale. Okay, so if there's a woman out there who's in business and needs help and wants a leg up in a sense, or a hand up, how do they do it here? Well, we have a very specific selection process, and it comes from people in the field. It's the people who are already in the ecosystem, so they know what is going on, what is being invested in. They can identify an entrepreneur who is coachable, who has the drive and can put the A-team together. Those are very important selection tools. Everybody's not suited to the kind of business that we're helping to build. These are high-growth businesses. They usually need to have equity capital, and some of them a great deal of equity capital before they monetize for their investors. But our companies 80% of our companies in 14 years are in business today. 80% of those companies are in business. That's almost the opposite of what happens for most of these companies coming through the venture market.
Without a doubt. So people just basically Google Springboard Enterprises and the Australian chapter comes up?
You will see Springboard Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, and you will see it come up, and I hope people will come in and join us and figure out how they can support these wonderful women who are really determined to grow big businesses.
Well,
So
Kate,
big businesses starting small.
Exactly. Kate, I think you're doing a great job. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we're going to be looking at the proposal that we have to pay $6 to go and see a doctor. Coming up after the break.